In today's video, I'm going to show you everything you need to know about the most important muscle of the body, psoas. If you're new here, my name is Natalie. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. We're going to start this video with about a 10-minute lecture, and then we'll move into chapter 2 where I'll show you how to assess and treat your psoas. Let's go. Now, before we can jump into the exercises and manual therapy techniques to help this muscle, we got to talk about what it is, where it is, and what it does. It is the only muscle of the body that crosses over and acts on the upper body, lower body, and the core. And it can create pain almost anywhere in the body. Now, psoas has two layers. The deepest layer attaches to the transverse processes of the lumbar spine L1 to 5. The superficial layer of psoas originates from the lateral sides of the lowest spine from T12 to L5 and into the intervertebral discs. This is very important to remember. Now, both layers merge together with another muscle called iliacus to form what some refer to as iliac psoas. So essentially, it's two muscles that turn into one. For purposes of today's video and lecture, we are going to keep psoas completely separate than iliacus, as they do have different lines of pull and they are different muscles that just happen to attach to the same tendon on the leg. When muscles contract, both ends come together. Sounds pretty simple, right? Except when these muscles have multiple origins or insertions, sometimes things can get a little bit more complicated. Now, psoas is one of my favorite muscles of the body because before modern medicine, psoas was often looked at by the medical community as the source of a lot of illness in our body. Now, psoas in Greek terms means loin, but because there's two of them, they're called psoas with an S. Ancient Greeks referred to this muscle as the womb of the kidney because the kidney actually sits inside this muscle. Back in the day, psoas was the primary level of treatment for a lot of, if not all, medical intervention. Now, remember how I said that the kidney is inside the muscle? What else is in there? On top of the kidney sits our adrenal glands. Our adrenal glands control our stress hormones. What is stress? Very quickly, stress can be internal or external. Stress can be illness or pressures put on the body, sometimes good and bad, or external is like lifting weights or external factors. Important to note, stress is not a state of mind, a situation, or a thought. We want stress. If we didn't have any stress, there would be no change in our body. There would be nothing calling for action. So when it's physical stress, it's a little bit easier to see. We're placing stress on a muscle. We're asking it to build. We're placing pressure on our joints. We're asking the bones to regenerate. When it's emotional, the same thing can be true. Now, with those adrenal glands sitting directly in that muscle, it becomes our main fight or flight response muscle. What does it do? It helps us run away. It's a hip flexor and a core stabilizer. It's going to get us out of there. Or what's the opposite? Curl in a ball. We're so afraid we curl up. That also does that action. But what happens when our body is in this constant state of stress is this muscle is always ready for this flight or flight. It's ready to go and ready to protect you. But it doesn't need to do that all the time. We also need to ask it to let go so it stops crushing the spine, so it stops crushing the lumbar plexus. What is the lumbar plexus? Let's go back. Now, the lumbar plexus is a series of nerves that come out through the spine. And in most people, the lumbar plexus actually goes through the two layers of psoas major and psoas minor. So if this muscle is chronically under stress, shortened, and tense, what's going to happen? That lumbar plexus that controls 11 muscle groups of the lower body, including the pelvic floor and some of our lowest organs, they're just not functioning properly. So it's really important to address and create that optimal flow, blood flow, lymph flow into the area to regenerate the nerves, to make sure the fascia around the area stays healthy. And so things can rejuvenate and that stress turns into a good stress, a healing stress. We cannot heal, we cannot rejuvenate, we cannot build more cells without this proper flow. So what do we do as massage therapists? We're always releasing tension. Is tension always a short, weak muscle? No, sometimes tension is caused by spasticity. Does tension mean strong? No. Does tension mean weak? Not necessarily either. Tension is just that, tension. We can release it manually, we can release it with movement, we can release it with the power of our mind and letting go. Never forget, anytime you are working on your body, you are also working on your nervous system and your brain. You cannot work on yourself, work on your body without incorporating the nervous system and the brain. We are not just parts stuck together. We are one whole being and every part works together. What we do to one area will affect another. There is no one, say, postural way of taking a look at somebody and saying they have a short psoas. Let me show you why. Psoas, so you can have a visual on my body, starts way up into your middle back, kind of at the very base of your rib cage, and some people even higher. And it attaches all the way down your lower back on the outside of your spine, or the lateral side of your spine, I should say. And then it comes out and through and across the body, deeper than where I am there, on the inside of all your abs and kind of through many of your organs. And it attaches right to the front here. Now, because of all those different attachments in the back and then that one in the front, if you can see, if psoas itself is very, very tense or shortened, then it can create an anterior tilt. But because it doesn't attach to the pelvis, it can actually sometimes also create a posterior tilt, especially when it's mainly psoas minor only involved. And then sometimes it's not even nearly as obvious. There's the rib thrust. Remember how I said it attaches to the back of the rib cage. If your psoas is quite tight, it can actually pull your rib cage forward. Now, how do you tell if that's true for you? Reach your hands up overhead. See what happens. Do your ribs splay out in front of you? I know mine sure do. And then sometimes it can be even more complicated. We have, say, a short psoas on one side, and then iliacus on the other side is compensating. So now we have a twisted pelvis. Now, some would argue that psoas is a hip flexor. I disagree. It has such a minor involvement in hip flexion, I would deem it a core stabilizer. It's attached to the spine on both sides. It is meant to hold the spine together on both sides. Remember how I said at the beginning, it's also attached to those intervertebral discs. What do you think happens when the psoas is pulling those discs out of place? That can lead to disc bulging. That can lead to pinched nerves. And when it's just psoas alone, wreaking havoc and spasming and squishing structures, it cuts off the blood flow supply to the nervous system, which is the lumbar plexus that goes through. Then what happens? We end up with dysfunction in the lower body. It doesn't just stop at the lower body. If our rib cage is splayed out or our pelvis is tucked in, what do you think's happening to our upper body and our upper back? We can have forward head tilt positions because we're stuck in this position. We can have breathing problems because our rib cage is now stuck because our diaphragm's not functioning properly because the psoas likes to go right through it. Point being, there's so many different things that can be going wrong in the body due to one little muscle. So what do we do about it? Let me show you. Okay, so very first check, it's really quite simple. You may have even seen this exercise in some of my other videos. You're just simply going to start with your feet flat and you're just gonna press your lower back into the ground. Easy, no restrictions, feel okay to do so? Awesome. Move your feet a little bit further away. See if you can then press your lower back into the ground. Still got it? Great. If not, hang out there for a second. That's your psoas length. Or maybe you can start moving one leg a little bit further. Again, testing. Can you get your entire lower back on the ground? And I want you to find that spot where you can no longer push your lower back on the ground. So mine, as you can see, my legs are flat on the ground. I can no longer achieve that. So I'm going to back myself up until I find that range where I can maintain that. So what does this mean at this point? Don't worry about it quite yet. Let's just get your range so that you can have an idea of how long your psoas may be. Now remember how I said one side might be acting up and the other? Take a peek at that as well. Straighten one leg, see if you can get your back down. Maybe straighten the other side, see if you can get your back down. Again, these are just for purposes of exploring to see if maybe this is where your pain is coming from. So unless you can have your legs completely flat on the floor and your lower back also can press down onto the floor, you could benefit from lengthening or releasing your psoas. Okay, second check we're going to do here, same position. You're gonna have your legs go flat this time, and I want you to think about your rib cage. Can you dump your rib cage, the back of your rib cage, down onto the floor without what I just did and using my entire shoulders? So I'm trying to keep my shoulders back, and I'm trying to see if I can press the back of my rib cage down without lifting my head up. If you have to, that's okay as well. We're just exploring, we're just getting to know our psoas. Now, if you're laying there and you cannot even think about getting the back of your rib cage onto the mat and you are splaying at the front of your rib cage like I am, you can also benefit from this video today. Now I'm back up to seated, and I invite you to head over to a wall where I'm going to show you the next evaluation with your heels right up against the wall and the back of your head against the wall. Just evaluate how far your lower back comes off of the wall. Is it more at the back of the rib cage? Is it more at the lower back? Can you, with your heels on the wall, press your entire spine towards the wall? Let's see what happens when we raise our arms up above our head. Is our rib cage splaying off? Can we still maintain that pressure of the entire lower back onto the wall? If not, again, that's totally okay. That's why you're here. You're probably gonna benefit from this video today. Moving into some strength checks for the psoas, you might be pleasantly defeated on how weak this muscle is on almost every single person I have met. But let's check it. So in a seated position, we are going to start here with our legs in front of us. Now we're gonna try not to use any tools or modifications, as we do wanna get a true test. So you're gonna sit up nice and tall, and your hands are gonna come in between you here. Now the more your hands come back is the weaker essentially you are. The further you can move your hands forward for this exercise, the stronger these muscles are. So we're gonna start in as neutral as possible, sitting up tall, and you're going to see if you can lift your legs up off the ground. Not a chance that's happening for me in that position. I'm going to move back a little bit. I can get my legs up a little bit more. I'm going to lean up back a little bit more, and I can lift my right one. I can lift my left one, no problem. So basically, if you're like me and you cannot sit in neutral position and lift those legs up off the ground, you can use this video too. So moving into how to treat this muscle, we are always gonna start with our strength component. So that's exactly where we're gonna start, right where we are. So I want you to find that position that works for you. If you're pretty much laying on the ground, that's okay. We all gotta start somewhere. Okay, so whatever level you're at, and I'm gonna start back here, I'm gonna start with one leg. I'm gonna lift and down. And I'm going to exhale, lift, and down. Now you'll notice I'm not lifting very high. I'm not actually trying to lift or get my knee to my chest or anything. I'm just trying to see if I can slightly get it off the floor to just kind of wake up that muscle. Now at the same time, I'm not only just lifting, but I'm almost pulling my leg inward towards my body, just to give it a little bit more activation. Now I've done a couple on each side here, and I'm actually already starting to feel a bit stronger. I'm lifting, squeezing, exhaling, inhaling, and we're just trying to wake it up. Now, I'm always nervous to do both legs at once because I do have a little bit of a disc injury in my lower back. So if you're like me and you're afraid to hurt yourself, you might want to stay with one leg at a time. But if you're also like me and very eager to keep going and challenge yourself, then let's try both legs. If it doesn't go anywhere, that's okay. Lifting up, it's not going anywhere. And I really can feel those muscles really firing up deep inside my core. And that's all I needed for the purposes of this part of the video. So now that we have, say, some electrical impulse and some blood flow activity headed to the area, let's use that to give it a quick stretch. Okay, so take a moment to bring yourself up onto your knees, where I'm going to show you the easiest and most effective way to stretch this muscle. Now, I want you to pay very close attention because you're not going to see as much movement as you're going to hear me describe. So we're gonna start on one knee and the other knee just in front of us. If this is bothering your knee, feel free to place a pillow or something underneath. We are going to use a theory called reciprocal inhibition. So basically what that is the theory that in order for me to, say, contract my quad, the hamstring needs to turn off. In other words, I wouldn't be able to move my knee joint because one is an extensor and one is a flexor. I can't extend and flex at the same time. It would just be a tug of war. So when we fire up one muscle, the opposite muscle group naturally releases. Now, what is the opposite muscle group to psoas? The glutes and the hamstrings. So we're gonna use those and fire them up, and that in turn should turn off the tension of the psoas. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna activate the hamstring by tucking our tailbone underneath us and squeezing the glute. That may be enough for some of you. So I've got my glute and my hamstring activated. The next step, if you're not feeling anything, is to just simply reaching up. Sometimes that just lengthens. So we're now taking the rib cage up and out of the pelvis. And then the next step would be to keep squeezing the glute and the hamstring and lean the rib cage back a little bit. Not lean back. We're not trying to bend. We're keeping the core very stable and we're shifting the rib cage behind the pelvis. Now our psoas is here to here opposed to here. So you can see that lengthening. So again, I'm contracting, I'm squeezing, and I'm shifting back and I'm reaching out. Now there is a fourth component where you can slightly rotate away if you feel you need it. So we're just gonna hold there and taking some deep, meaningful breaths. Now while you guys are breathing, remember how I said earlier that the psoas goes through the diaphragm. The diaphragm is the mover that helps you breathe. In order to really optimize this stretch, you wanna take the most deep and meaningful breaths you've taken in your entire life. So when we're in that position, keep breathing very, very deep. Inhale, inhale, really focus on that exhale as you keep squeezing and reaching and lifting. Trying to stay relaxed and calm. We don't want that stress response. And really focus on that exhale to get everything out, digging deep. And inhale again. Strong breath in. Use your breath to massage your internal organs, to create space between the layers. And exhale very, very deeply. And then very slowly begin to release. Now we're on the other side to stretch out the psoas. The exact same thing applies over here. We want our knee directly underneath our pelvis. We're going to tuck our bottom under, activating the hamstring and the glute. We're reaching up on the same side if we still need to, and we're finding our breath as we shift backwards, opening, creating space deep within the core. So we're not talking about abs, obliques, transverse. We're talking deeper than that. Think about your spine. Think about the very front of your spine, behind all the organs, behind all your lunch, behind everything sits this muscle that is carrying you and all the burdens of your life. Be gentle with it. Don't force anything. Breathe, relax, open, reach, squeeze. Good. Let's do 2 more of those deep breaths. Remember, give it a little bit more. The squeezing should be coming from the back of the hip and the abs, releasing the space between the spine and on the side of your body. Thrusting the hip forward and pulling that rib cage back, and complete your exhale all the way as you slowly come out of that stretch. Now, this last part of the video, I'm going to show you how to find psoas and how you may be able to wake it up or give it some love with your own bare hands and see if you can break the spasm and allow that blood flow to come back in and get rid of all those wastes. So we're gonna move back into laying onto our backs. Okay, we're back down here again. I hope you guys are comfortable. We're almost done. Now, before we get started, please just be very gentle. We're not digging very deep. We're just exploring a little bit, and we're just softly releasing some tension in a muscle that very much so likes the attention but doesn't often get it. Now, first of all, I want you to find your hip bone. So at the very front, you'll have what's called the ASIS. So it's the kind of the bony part right at the front of your ilium or hip bone. And when you're laying on your back in this position, you should be able to find it no problem. So once you find that hip bone, I want you to just slightly place your fingertips just medial. So just inside the hip bone, and just get to know that area a little bit. Push in, don't be too afraid. There's really not much. If you're just inside the hip bone, there's not too much you have to worry about, but just don't push too hard. You might immediately notice iliacus. It's a beefy muscle that's coming right out the inside of that hip bone. Now, if you move to kind of the top of your hip bone and just slightly inward a little bit. Now, we're not very far off of it, but we're just slightly inside of it, and placing your fingers in that area. And I just want you to very gently lift your leg on the same side. See if you found anything that jumped out at you. Now, you may have to change the position of where your fingers are a little bit. For today's purposes, I don't want anybody to come up over their hip bone. Some of us therapists will, when we're addressing the muscle belly or psoas minor, we will come a little bit further into the, let's say, the organs of the body to find it. But unless you're a trained professional, we don't really want to be squeezing some of the structures in there if you're not really sure what they are. So we're only going to proceed from here if you're absolutely sure what you're feeling. So for me, when I'm just slightly inside my pelvis, I feel it jump out at me more so in one spot than anywhere else. So I'm going to kind of stay right there. Now from there, you're just going to lift to make sure you've got it, and then you're just going to place a little bit of pressure on it, not a lot. We're not driving into this muscle. We're just talking to it, remember? So we're just trying to say, hey, I'm here. And as you start to move your leg down and out, you might notice a sensation change. You might feel the muscle moving out from underneath you. You may notice a spasm. And then you're going to exhale to come back up again. And we're just going to move down and up just ever so slightly, seeing if you can essentially massage this muscle. Couple more times here. Inhaling as you slide down. If it's starting to shoot into strange places, that is totally normal as well. We're going to do that a couple more times. Just very gently slide the leg out. Now, when I first started, it was really quite intense. I could really feel it. It was sharp. It was kind of shooting downward into my groin, but also into my lower back. And now I'm on, I think, the 4th or 5th rep, and I can't feel anything anymore. So that tells me that that muscle woke up a little bit and basically decided to let go. Now, Once we're done that side, you're going to do the exact same thing on the opposite side. Now I have my microphone here, which I forgot was there the whole time, so you guys might have already been wondering, what is that? I love these microphones. I have the Rode Wireless Go 2, so there's 2 of them. And then my buddies over at L's Audio in Medicine Hat here lent me these lavalier mics so that I can play around with different microphones before I buy. Definitely go check them out. I had no idea they have so many options. The Rode microphones are available on Amazon, and you can head to my Amazon store, which is linked down below, and you can grab yourself a set too if you're into these type of microphones. Anyways, that's not why we're here, and I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just love to share things that I find that I love. Okay, so at first I'm just trying to see if I can find, and again, you don't have to be watching the screen anymore. You can really pay attention. Now, before I even lifted my leg on this side, I found my psoas. It is really, really tight today. I'm not really sure why. My back has been acting up, so possibly this is why. So I'm pinning that, and just to confirm that that's what I'm on, I'm lifting my leg, and oh yeah, did that ever jump out at me? So once I'm comfortable that I'm on the muscle and that I'm in a safe place, I am going to very gently lift that leg and straighten it down the floor. If you're having a hard time with keeping your foot up and moving into this action, you can slide your foot on using a sock onto a hard surface, or maybe putting a towel under your heel. I like to keep my psoas a little bit active as I'm lengthening it, so that's why I'm doing most of the work instead of sliding or gliding along the ground. But either way is totally fine. So I'm inhaling as I straighten the leg down, and I'm exhaling to come back up, and I'm inhaling again, and exhaling. Good, and I felt that one let go almost immediately. So my right side was really acting up and took a little bit longer to unwind, but my left side was probably actually the healthier one, and it was actually working on my side, which is why I could feel it, whereas the right side was just spasming and freaking out, so it wasn't actually helping me. It needed to calm down a little bit. Now, if I were to go back to how, say, I was at the very beginning of the video when I was testing to see the length of my psoas, I may now be able to see a little bit of a difference. So let's see where we're at. So if I straighten my legs down to, well, let's just start right down on the floor. And that didn't take a whole lot, but I am actually now able to press my entire lower back onto the floor without bending my knees. I am aware that there's a little bit of a window underneath my thighs, but that's quite the release that I have received from barely doing anything. Thank you so much for watching to the end. That's all I had for you for today. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please drop them below. Be sure to hit the like button. It's a free way you can help me out. If you know somebody that could use this information, please go ahead and share with them. You can always reach me directly on Instagram under Natalie Heals. And if you found this video helpful, you may also find this video helpful, or any of my other hip and lower back videos. Thanks again for watching, and happy healing.